From hot takes on Twitter to bad liturgy to priests who aren't maybe setting the best example on social media, this week I am joined by Katie McGrady to unpack some of the crappy ways we can share the faith. And then some of the ways we can do that better. But at its core, this conversation is all about ways that really stink to share the faith. Ways we fail at trying to be good Catholics, to draw others into the Catholic faith, and how we can try our darndest to do that a lot better. That's this week on the show. It's a fiery, gloves off conversation. I think you're going to love it. Please watch and enjoy. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Please subscribe to the channel. We're slowly, I think it's finally growing, this channel actually. Growing the channel. Please subscribe, hit the bell, all those fun things to do on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave a rating or review. Those help to push the podcast out to new people. Guys, hold on tight because this week we're going to get, I don't know, the gloves are coming off. Is that an expression? I'm not sure.
It's a thing.
I shouldn't maybe lead with that. I am joined by Katie Prejean McGrady. She is a wife and a mother, the host of the aptly named Katie McGrady Show on Sirius XM Catholic channel, the author of a number of fine books, the host of the Like a Mother podcast from Our Sunday Visitor, and the Ave Explorers from Ave Maria Press. Each week, Katie and her husband Tom produce a fantastic family mass prep episode for the Hallow app, which is awesome. We love that. And most importantly, she is the proud owner of a beautiful new backyard patio with a bar that I must say, Katie, looks fantastic.
Looks great, yeah.
I love it.
And we didn't have to build it. We just bought it, so it was even better.
That's amazing. Katie, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay. There's a lot to begin with. Okay, but first of all, I want to say this before we start here. We're going to talk about kind of the idea of, I'm going to call the show, and this is very uncordial of me, but crappy ways to share the faith. Okay, and I want to say before I begin any of that stuff, you are, I think, the most sane person that I follow on Catholics, which maybe says a lot about who I follow.
Who are you following? Yeah.
But I gotta say, honestly, just speaking truthfully and maybe personally for a second here, Katie, I joined the church in 2015. My wife and I, we were evangelicals before that, and I began to slowly follow Catholic people on Twitter. And I think you're one of the early people that I followed. I don't know how I found you or why I found you on Twitter, but I found you on Twitter and began to follow you. And you have honestly stood out for the last nearly decade that I followed you as somebody who's just quite sane and quite Catholic.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
It's true. Maybe you don't feel sane some days. I'm sure you don't. You're a parent and I'm a parent too, and I get that feeling. But there is, and this discussion is going to be kind of about this, but there's so much garbage is maybe too strong of a word, but so many crappy ways that you see people doing crappy things out there that aren't sharing the faith, that are detracting from the joy of the faith, that are counter evangelizing. But you are a great person to talk about this topic with because you I think do a great job, and you're not crazy.
Can you just tell my family in the other room that?
I'll let them know.
Can we? I'll set everyone in my immediate contact list is getting that intro. It's just see, guys, I'm not nuts. Good.
Yeah, not nuts. Certified not nuts. I don't know if I have if I'm able to make that judgment call.
No, I am. Well, online perhaps I'm more sane. Yeah. I get a little fired up offline, and I test tweets on my husband, and he's like, no, maybe don't say that.
I think I send probably 1 out of every 10 tweets that I write. Actually send.
It's true. So it's the drafts folder.
Yes.
Oh man, in our canonization processes, if we ever make it that far, let's hope they don't go into the drafts or they don't go into the potential tweets that could have been.
You gotta erase that first, but it's true, right? And I think it's a good Catholic practice though to have a large draft folder and maybe a smaller actual folder of sent tweets that you've sent out. Okay, so the idea for this conversation, I don't know, we kind of kick things back and forth this afternoon on Instagram, And you brought up this topic, and I thought this is a great topic because, first of all, you said some things about this that are outspoken on Twitter that I love. Sane things, cordial things. I've said things too on this topic, and this has been one of those things that has got me thinking and I don't know, bugged me is maybe, again, too strong of a word. We're trying to be cordial on this
You're doing
show.
such a nice job being so nice, and I just want to give you permission. Like, gloves can come off. Like, I know you're not coming for me. We're coming for the
dumb
others.
Things. Yeah. But there are a lot of crappy ways people can share the faith in different places, in person, on Twitter, on Instagram, and social media. I want to dig into some of the ways that you've seen, that we've seen, that people are doing things that aren't great, that are detracting from the faith. And I do want to circle around to good ways you can kind of share the faith as a bow on the end of the discussion. But I want to begin with some crappy ways. And I want to ask you maybe this question. And I have my own answer to this question too that I can share afterwards. And we can. But the crappiest. What do you think like the crappiest way you've seen somebody try and share the faith with in person, on social media? Have you seen some real crap out there before?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I think back to sophomore year of high school. Like, we'll go all the way back to the early 2000s.
It's good therapy session.
It's a good therapy session. Well, so I'm a cradle Catholic, born and raised in a Catholic family. My mom's a convert, so she's incredibly zealous. Yeah. Daily mass goers as kids. Like, recovering female altar server, like the whole 9 yards. Super involved. And we have one Catholic high school in my diocese, and I taught there for a while too. So, and my dad went there. Like, this is a family place. Like, I know this place very well. And my sophomore year of high school, I did not have her. Blessedly, the Lord provided reprieve. Junior year of high school. Provided reprieve because there was one section of junior theology that was taught by the senior theology teacher, who is God's gift to high school students. Like, just this loving, kind. She was a mom who went and got her theology degree after raising her kids and wanted to share the faith. So I had Miss D as my theology teacher. Everybody else had this other teacher. Let's just call her Miss M. If any Louisiana folks know who I'm talking about, they immediately know who she is. She was the most sour-faced Catholic. This is not very cordial of me for saying this, but I don't think she knows how to get to podcasts, so I'm not sure she'll ever hear this. So she was just sour. And like, there's this line from Pope Francis that like, we shouldn't just be like forever Lent Catholics. Yeah. I believe the exact translation is like sourpuss Catholics. And I love that phrase because like, you can't really say that phrase in common without people being like, are you from the 50s? Like, where are you? Did you walk out of a black and white silent film? But like, she was just a sour woman. She had never had anything nice to say to teenagers. She didn't like kids. It's like, why are you a teacher? You literally spend your day with 15-year-olds. Either you're just looking for an easy out from purgatory or you can't do anything else. And like, I think that might have been what it is. I think sometimes people evangelize in the church because they think, well, that's the only way to be Catholic, is if I like have some sort of platform or if I have like something to say. And it's like, for like centuries and centuries, most Catholics just like went to church and went home and lived their Catholic lives. They didn't have podcasts. They didn't have YouTube. They didn't have Twitter. Like, they just lived their Catholic faith, or they weren't in the front of classrooms with a bunch of high school students, literally teaching heresy. Like this woman at one point told us that the Eucharist, I had friends in the class and she like, oh, the Eucharist is a symbol. And I'm like 100% sure since I was 7 that is not it. I had very good second grade formation for First Communion. So she was just a sour woman. And it wasn't even the bad theology or like her methodology in the classroom, which was basically just worksheets and define terms and watch a Robert Barron video back when he was Father Robert Barron, which are fine. Those are perfectly good. This is not a knock on Barron by any means, but like, she was watching them in the OG days, like DVD Catholicism series, handwritten notes kind of thing. And it was her attitude. She did not seem happy. 1, about her job, 2, about being Catholic. And I think that is like the death blow. I'm not saying we all have to be happy, clappy, walk around, Jesus is great, but like, we also can't be miserable 100% of the time. You can have a bad day, but not all the bad days. And like, that was the worst. I literally had the thought at some point in my junior year, she's been Catholic her whole life. And if she's this miserable, and I believe she had like left the convent at some point, because every now and then, like, you'd hear stories of how she had been a nun and didn't make it. And so then it's like, also like, you weren't happy as a nun, maybe, but none of them are happy. And I didn't have that much experience with religious life. The attitude and the demeanor was the crappiest witness to Catholicism. And it took a long time. I'm not a big fan of the deconstruction term because I think it gets misused a lot, but like it took a long time to deconstruct in my head that is not what Catholicism is not this angry sourness that I got from her. Easily the crappiest way. And I've seen a lot of crappy stuff since, but easily the crappiest way.
Well, a couple of things, like, first of all, those are formative years for you as a Catholic, right? And you're seeing somebody who's an aged Catholic who's done it for a long time, who, like, right? And you go, well, is that what I'm aiming for?
Is that what I'm signing up for?
That just seems like, it's one thing. We have a weird kind of publicly funded Catholic school system here where I am. It's a very, very strange system. It's a holdover from our constitutional days when they wanted to appease the Catholics by funding both a Protestant school board and a Catholic school board. And this has continued now until today. And it's a weird kind of nominally Catholic school board in many parts. But what this has created is, for me, as a evangelical kid going to the public high school, I'd see these Catholic high school kids, and they knew all the best drugs were, or where to find the best drugs, and how to party the hardest with the Catholic school kids, because they were nominally Catholic. And that was bad enough for me as a tool for evangelism, because I would see the Catholics and go, oh yeah, well, they're not Christian, they're not saved.
Living it. Yeah,
they're going to the parties and doing the drugs and whatever. But even worse, I think, to see that from a Catholic teacher at a Catholic high school, you go, right, is this what I'm aiming towards? Is this the goal, to be a sourpuss Catholic? Like, yeah, I can see that being detrimental, right?
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, I went through that typical, like, at a certain point in your high school phase, you question everything. And we get confirmed in junior year in my diocese. So my parents were great. They said, you don't have to finish. You don't have to get confirmed, but you have to go to class. You have to do the coursework. And then my mom did that. Like, she signed up and she was the teacher. So, okay. So like now she's like really going to work hard, because that was, again, early 2000s. All the confirmation prep was done in home. Basically, we all had workbooks, and I, became Catholic because the antidote to her sourness, which was certainly affecting far more than just me, was this incredible deacon, God rest his soul, Deacon Glenn Vayu, who was our academic administrator at the school. And he had this very thick New Orleans accent and a little bit of a lisp and a bit of a hunchback, a very distinct looking man. And he would keep change in his pocket and he would jingle it. So you could hear him walking down the halls, and like you could hear him for a mile. And he would come into classrooms. His thing was observing teachers, just to pop in, just see what's going on in the classroom. The thing that I hated as a teacher later on, but loved as a student, because you could see the teacher like instantly get into like, I'm going to be a dynamic educator now. I'm not just going to pass out a worksheet. Again, I didn't have this woman, so I'm just like watching from afar her sourness and her attitude, and even getting it from like across the hall. So clearly it was affecting people inside the classroom. But I raised my hand in class one day and was like debating my very kind teacher about God's goodness versus like evil in the world. How could a good God allow evil? An age-old question that like a budding atheist would be asking. And so we're debating back and forth. And I clearly did not win the argument, but Deacon Vayu tapped me on the shoulder and he said, do you want to come talk to me after school about all of this? I thought I was in trouble. I go into his office. He offers me a cup of coffee. We sit down and just talk for like 30 minutes. He handed me a copy of Frank Sheed's Theology for Beginners. And he said, I'd love to chat with you about this on the regular. He ends up becoming my confirmation sponsor, and I obviously like went through with it, and my whole life is different because of one sour Catholic versus like one Catholic who was willing to engage in conversation, but also like was happy. And again, this isn't to say that the only good evangelization that happens is happy evangelization, because sometimes there are heavy things or hard things, and like you don't have to have a smile plastered on your face all the time. But there has to be something that's animated you beyond just the obligation to do all this Catholic stuff. That's not love if it's just this sour obligation. And so like the antidote to her and her terrible witness, and that's maybe I'm being mean. I'm sure she's a good person on her own, but in a classroom and in the school setting, absolutely not. Was this guy who was willing to take the time and was willing to give this joyful witness. And it was about so much more than just the nitty-gritty theology of Theology for Beginners. It was really just like, what do you long for? Like, what's your purpose in life? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? What do you want to achieve? Would affirm gifts in me. We stayed friends up until he passed away quite suddenly in 2019. He went in for a routine procedure in Houston, Texas, and he never came home. Like his wife didn't even go with him to the hospital. Just utterly tragic, but also like so appropriate that that's how he went. It was just like he was too good for this world. And so I think like I compare those two people because they were so stark in my mind. And because 16 years old, it's a hugely important year.
Yeah. That's an amazing. I love, Katie, that contrast. That's amazing. Those two in contrast. And you're right about you can not have a good day. You can suffer as a Catholic. You will suffer as a Catholic, right? But there's a difference between being a sourpuss and being somebody who's Catholic and faithful and suffering. And so there's a big difference there, right?
Yeah.
In the attitude.
Yeah. It's the attitude. I think it is rooted in really and I would never purport to understand what this woman's relationship with God is. So we can just talk generally now in the sense of, like, if I have a transactional relationship with God where I do something, he does something for me, obviously if like things are not going my way, well, then God's not good. As opposed to like recognizing that there's so much beyond my control. What I can control is my reaction and my approach and my like sanctification of suffering by either embracing it or recognizing, that God never allows an evil from which a greater good could not be drawn. And so I think the relationship with God is what ultimately animates the presentation to the world, to the people randomly, the people that you have deep, intimate relationships with, the people that you're getting to know or sharing the faith with, even just very casually. It starts with the internal before it can ever become external.
Yeah, that's great. I have experience of contrast like that. I hadn't thought of this ahead of time, but I was going through the RCIA process, becoming Catholic, and I just kind of called up the closest parish to our house at the time. I didn't know that there were differences in parishes, and there were some more lively parishes, and there were some parishes that maybe were a bit more sleepy, and I called up a bit of a sleepy parish, it turns out. And so the RCIA course, this is 2014-15, mind you, was done with VHS tapes, wheeled out on a little VCR. They wheeled the TV out, kind of like the handouts were all kind of photocopied from, I don't think it was even photocopied. It was like lithograph like copies. It was like before photocopying was a thing. These were the copies that were made here, and it was rough for me because I had read for years about the Catholic Church, and I'd read my way into the church. I agreed to all the different things that the church believed. I had to just do the final process and become Catholic, and so it was challenging. It was made more challenging by some of the curmudgeons who were part of this program, people who had signed up to be like sponsors, to sponsor new Catholics, were some of the kind of grumpiest, most gospely people that I had encountered. Yeah. And I kind of thought, like, is this what I'm signing up for? Yeah. Like we're just here kind of to check boxes. There was no like sense of joy or of passion or of like a relationship with Christ. Yeah. In some of these people, and again, like you said, I can't judge their circumstances or their hearts or their minds. I don't know what was going on, and perhaps I was just too naive and too new of a becoming Catholic to recognize how they actually lived their faith out. But I'd get there and there'd be gossip about who's done this and who's done what, and I was like, this isn't awesome. But then in the middle of our RCIA program, this elderly priest, I don't even remember his name anymore, and I think he's still alive, and he must be 200 years old by now, I think, because he was really old then. He shuffles in, and he's the first priest who's come actually wearing his clerical like garb. Other priests had come kind of just in casual clothes, like a Hawaiian print shirt or whatever, and even the sister who ran the course was a sister who didn't wear a habit. It was all very like, we don't kneel anymore when we pray. We don't have to do this. It was very much. It was very casual. Not the Catholic Church that I thought I was entering into. Right, that was reverent and holy and believed in these certain things. So he was the first guy, like this kind of bright light, this bright beacon of a priest who kind of shuffled in, and he was so earnest and so honest, and he was frail back then. So I don't imagine what he's like now, but he was doing it. Like, he was there to be a priest and be amongst us and to teach us and to bless us and pray with us. And he came twice to our program. And those 2 nights out of the months we did this program, which was so impactful to me, to see his witness as this guy who was, he was selling the Catholic faith that I was buying. Like, that was that's the wrong metaphor, but
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
The faith that he was practicing was the faith that I was seeking after. Yeah. That I couldn't find in people who are complaining and gossiping and kind of just there to, I don't know, be social with their friends and probably had done this program for 20 years, and that's what they did. They just were sponsoring this program, and it was, a breath of fresh air. And that for me was was evangelization done right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that all he was doing is just living out his Catholic faith,
Yeah.
honestly and earnestly. I don't know.
Remembering like why he said yes
Yeah.
in the first place.
Sure,
And I think it's hard to it's easy to get away from it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and blame a sourpuss Catholic for becoming that, because sometimes it's circumstances, sometimes it's experiences, sometimes it's, bad priests or bad people, or, a terrible experience or irreverence or whatever it is. Like, there's always probably some sort of trigger that puts a person in the foul mood Catholicism. So like there's a reason for it, but then there's something so refreshing, I guess, is really the word I'm looking for here. It's like a nice cold drink of water on a hot day in encountering the Catholic who loves it, who loves their faith, and who isn't trying to sell you a bill of goods, isn't trying to convince you like, oh, this is the only way to be Catholic, but says like, well, this is my expression of faith, and this is what it means for me to be Catholic, and I'm proud to be, and this is how I live it. That really can, I think, draw folks in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the contrast is, so I have a big thing about the hot take. Okay. And I know this is like, and there's different, I mean, I don't know, you're feeling, you hot take maybe sometimes. I don't know. Is that fair to say?
I used to a lot more. This is
okay.
It's really interesting that you say you found me and I was sane, because there was a period of time on Twitter when I wasn't. And like, I have been trying to track when it pivoted. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know if it was when I had kids, maybe a second kid. I don't think it was when I started the radio show, because I definitely mellowed by then. But like, I used to be a hot take machine, thinking that's the way to win.
Yes.
As if Twitter is something you can win.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's just a news forum. I mean, come on, guys. Like, nobody wins that.
I love that. Well, I learned long ago from my friend John Mark Grody from the Coming Home Network, Journey Home, Marcus Grody's son. Lovely guy. We connected many years ago, and he's big into the virtues. And one of the things that he taught me early on in our conversations about virtue, and actually we had a podcast that never got released to the world for 3 episodes we recorded. And one was on virtues and hot takes that was never released, and I lost on a hard drive that died years ago. But
to the ether, it's gone.
The ether, yeah, it's gone there somewhere. Like, the Lord knows he's heard it and saw fit to destroy the hard drive. But one thing that he told me was that I think that really has informed my thinking about a lot of evangelization and ways to share the faith, is that the hot take is antithetical to the Catholic practice of prudence or temperance, right? The idea that you don't need to express the first thing that you think. As Catholics, we actually should be slowing down and going, okay, do I need to say this thing? Is this a prudent thing to say before we say it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which I think, right, you say you used to try and win this Twitter. Like, I think a lot of people have that same urge, right? I got to post this thing to get the likes. I got to share this thing to get good replies and do something. But so many times that way that you think maybe you're sharing the faith by sharing this like thing you just thought of and are putting out there is going to actually do more damage or I don't know. As a recovering hot taker.
It does. Well, I think you're getting at something here that, yes, prudence is necessary, of course, in all things, right? Like in how much you drink, in how much money you choose to spend on a back patio bar spontaneously on a Sunday afternoon. And like, let's not talk about it, but it's worth it because life of abundance. Yeah. But I think that Twitter, the medium of social media, lends itself to the perpetual scroll, right? So like Twitter especially, there's no end. Like you can't scroll to the bottom. There is no bottom because there's always something new feeding the top. Like, and if people stop feeding the top, it stops existing. So the juggernauts, the larger accounts, the people who make money off of these social media platforms, be it Instagram, social media, TikTok, whatever it is, feeding the endless scroll, will constantly try to create conversations, topics, whatever it might be. Discourse is the word that's used on Twitter. And we think that we are consuming something, and yet we have become consumed. And we think that we are creating something, but what's actually being created is this monster of feed me, feed me, feed me. Oh, I need to feed back the machine, right? Like it's the jukebox. Oh, I put a quarter in to get the song. I liked the song, so let me put another quarter in. And the next thing you know, you're out of quarters, and there's a conclusion to the music, right? So that's maybe not a good analogy because I just said there's no conclusion to Twitter, but I think there was a phase of my Twitter years where I thought the way to win Twitter, or maybe this way, the way to win souls was to simply try to win. Because there used to be, in the early days of Catholic Twitter, and some folks might remember this, it was kind of a small little niche community of like the same voices with like, smaller platforms like chiming in from time to time, but there was kind of a jovialness to it. There was a casualness to it. And then you start getting check marks, and then you start getting larger people who are coming on not to engage in discourse conversation, but to simply share, go look at this thing, go buy this thing, go watch this thing, or like listen to my one particular opinion, but I'm never going to reply to anybody else, and like actually have conversation. And I had two distinct moments. I had an email from Dr. Tim O'Malley, who's a good friend of mine. And Tim has kind of arrived at different places of my career. And we've had like personal conversations about things that I needed to do professionally. Like I am on radio and in podcasting because of Tim saying, you need to figure out something else to do besides travel all the time because it's going to kill you. And he wasn't wrong. It was killing me. It was killing my family. It was killing my marriage. So he was like, he gave me some really good advice in the lobby of the Marriott in Baltimore, Maryland. Like I distinctly remember where I was and how much I cried and this great piece of information. And I also remember where I was when I got an email from him. I was sitting in a residence inn in Peachtree City, Georgia. And I was up there for a parish mission. And I was there from like a Sunday morning to a Wednesday night. So quite a long stretch of time. And I couldn't even tell you what the Twitter debate was about, but I do remember. It was about this was in 2018. It was about the pre-synod. I don't even remember this, but they invited three of us from the United States to go represent the United States at this gathering at the Vatican. This document was written. The document had come out, and people were mad because it doesn't matter what the Vatican does these days. Someone's going to be mad. And normally, I think I would have just like let it fly off my back. But I was one of the people that wrote this document. And so I was defensive. And when you're defensive on Twitter, you're not cordial. When you're defensive on Twitter, you turn into a sourpuss. When you're defensive on Twitter, you throw hot takes thinking these are my bombs that will destroy my enemy. And so I was defensive. And Tim sent me this lovely email. I saved it. I have it archived in my Gmail that basically said, you don't have to win because there is no winning. And you don't have to reply to everything because those people don't matter. Not that they matter as human beings, but they don't matter to your well-being or to your ministry or to your perspective. And it was this fundamental shift of I cannot waste my life correcting people on the internet or even saying things on the internet. Because what's more valuable, saying it to my spouse, to whom I can have a wonderful conversation with, or saying it to these followers, some of whom will engage with it and will have fruitful conversation, but most of whom will maybe take it from their own place of defensiveness or like they'll see it and they'll totally take something out of context, which happens all the time on the radio. But like I can deal with that there because I know that people are jumping from station to station to station, but on Twitter it's there and they can scroll and they can see the track and they can see the history of it. And so you don't have to win it. You don't have to win Twitter. And if I don't have to win it because there is no winning, and if I can't get to the bottom of it because there is no bottom, then how am I using it versus how do I let it use me? And really, I think it comes down to curating it. This is not a conversation about how to use social media, but like what I've done is I very clearly curate the follow list.
Yeah.
So I like only want to see the people I want to see. I only reply to the things that I think are actually going to be fruitful for my soul. And I only say the things that have maybe been on my mind, like substantive things, not just like a picture of my kids, but like substantive things that have been on my mind for a while. Because that's not a hot take. That is like a lukewarm take, possibly even a cold take, like probably going to turn into an op-ed later that I'm being paid for because why give away the content for free, right? And that I think is really the only way to navigate it. And if a person is caught in reading the hot takes or giving the hot takes, then like they need to cool it because that's going to burn you eventually.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, in those interactions that you're having, people are watching you.
Yeah.
The people are from the outside who aren't involved in the conversation are watching you. And I can't think of the number of times your point about curating your list is yes, I affirm that. I have like 200 people that I follow on Twitter, which is very, very low because I have spent time if somebody tweets like more than one thing that bothers me, I just unfollow them.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna miss that
button.
person. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, mute.
I think most of my list is muted, and like maybe you get unmuted from time to time.
Yeah. And that's kept me much more sane, right? And take me out of those things. But I can't tell you the number of times that somebody that I follow, I've seen them engaged in a debate with somebody else. I'm not even part of this conversation, but I've seen them in that debate and gone, oh wow, I don't like that take at all. Like that doesn't look good on them at all, that kind of opinion. And it can be somebody who's otherwise a great theologian or a great thinker or has written awesome books that I love, who then, right, their take on that is like that. And it just totally shifts your opinion of them, and the trust or the kind of the faith you've put in them as that person to see them engage in those things. So, I'm thinking of this too for people who are coming into the church, right? There are so many opportunities to be let down by people that you have read or are following, who are out there just giving those hot takes, right? And it's there for everyone to kind of see, and. Right. And not, the cold take.
Right.
Much preferable.
We got to bring it back. But some people say this sometimes, like when they get mad at the Pope. Oh, we were never supposed to know everything happening at the Vatican. Right. Like, the peasants of old weren't tracking the Pope's movements, right? Like they were just, Immaculate Conception's doctrine and dogma now? Great. Like we believe that already. And it's wonderful. Okay, we live in 2023, so clearly we can know everything about the Pope. But in the same way that like maybe we weren't meant to know everything coming from every little tiny sector of the church, we weren't meant to know everybody's opinion on every single thing, nor were we supposed to have like an opinion about every single thing. Like I'm an informed individual who knows incredibly little about like 90% of the stuff that's happening in American politics. I get the headlines. I read the newspaper like on Sundays when it's on my parents' coffee table. I curate my news in a specific way because if I know more, then I'm expected to be able to say something intelligently about it. And so I'm going to choose ignorance sometimes because I also don't think like I'm the person to have a full-blown opinion about what we're doing in Ukraine or whether the tax code should be changed or should masses not have to happen during COVID for a little while. I don't know. I'm going to let an expert tell me that. And Twitter has killed expertise. Twitter has killed any sort of well-formed opinion. It's just given us all a little device that lets us have a megaphone for a second. And so when it comes to the faith, rather than this very personal, not private, but very personal, intimate relationship with Jesus that brings me to church on Sunday, that takes me to an adoration chapel, that allows me to encounter people one-on-one, now I got 40,000 people waiting for my opinion on the mass readings on Sundays, or like, what do I think about the productization of Catholicism? And like I give what I think is a pretty measured response. And now all of a sudden, people who make Catholic products think I'm mad that they make Catholic products. And it's like, maybe that opinion wasn't for everyone. Maybe that was an opinion for my husband. Or like maybe that was an opinion for a radio audience that could listen to the whole thought said aloud. And I think when it comes to the sharing of the faith, we can never be too careful. I mean, St. Paul tells us, like, if we don't have love, we're clanging cymbals. And like a lot of us don't take to heart that if I'm a clanging cymbal, that's noise that's hurtful.
Yeah.
And like there's responsibility. The same way that like a teacher who was a sour Catholic who like drove me from the faith for a little while, like there's responsibility there. It's not just her fault by any means. Like there's ownership on my part for receiving it that way, but it was also given in that way. And so if we're not taking quite seriously, one, that the internet's forever, two, that this is all going to be looked at in our canonization classes, three, that our kids are one day going to see the stuff that we posted on social media. You ever thought about that? Like your kids are going to read your posts about their 5th birthday party or like how terrible it was that they didn't sleep for the first 2 years of your life. So like, be careful, folks. But like also the eyes of the people out there who maybe just search Catholic or who search Pope Francis or who scroll and the algorithm fed them commentary from Catholic podcasters about how everybody hates that we sell ads or like whatever it is, that you have a responsibility. Don't let it keep you up at night. I'm not asking you to become anxious about it, but like to let that just kind of be a guide to our thumbs or to our passing thoughts or to those, cool those hot takes just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, let's take some gloves off for a second. I had just like the worst experience interacting with a Catholic priest on Twitter that really...
Can I guess who? No, I'm not going to say that. That would not be cordial, but I'm going to imagine, because I've had my own too.
I actually forget what his name was, but my confessor might remember his name, because I went there afterwards and had to confess some feelings I felt that weren't very cordial. But here's the thing. So I woke up this one morning and I checked Twitter as you do, half awake, and I saw this take that was just so like gut wrenching. It was this well-meaning, Baptist guy who posts like nothing. He posts like inspirational quotes and Bible verses and stuff. Not a evangelical apologist, not somebody who's militant against Catholicism. A regular Baptist guy from the States. And somehow he had posted this picture of a statue of Mary. I think it was Mary holding Jesus who's crucified. It was kind of a weird statue, right? And his question was, what am I looking at here? Like, what's happening? This kind of seems strange. Why is Mary big and Christ is small on the cross? And why is she holding him? Right? His question was very benign and not sarcastic and not rude, just an honest question. And somehow this Catholic priest had gotten a hold of this, had found this tweet somehow. It wasn't like it didn't go viral. It wasn't like a very popular, I don't know how he found it, and kind of quote tweeted it and said some really insulting things. Like, who is this guy? Is he an idiot? Is he joking? Like, give me a break. And I read that and I was like, wait a second, what? And I wasn't sure that I read it properly, so I had to look at it again and look at everyone's profiles involved to make sure that this was actually a Catholic priest. But what was happening there in that tweet was an honest kind of question from an honest evangelical guy who was then ridiculed by a Catholic priest who went, "Are you an idiot? Like, what's your problem?" And I didn't know how to take that other than to be like really disturbed and think like, what is going on here? And actually I made a video that went mildly viral on Instagram, just unpacking this after the whole day of just stewing on that. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about that. I tried to, I have a very busy job. I'm busy all day long. But I couldn't get it out of my mind, this interaction. So finally I made a little video on the car ride home and just said like, this is what happened. Like, this is weird. Don't do this. If you are tempted to do this as a priest, as anybody, just don't do this, because you're not only like not evangelizing, not sharing the faith, you're like ridiculing somebody who's actually asking questions that you could answer and help to instruct, right? And actually I ended up reaching out to this priest and said, "Hey, I'm just a bit confused. Like, this was, maybe you could have like answered this question." Like, I think my response was very cordial. I kind of crafted and thought about it for a bit before I sent off this little message. It wasn't a hot take DM to this priest.
You didn't quote tweet him and criticize him.
He just blocked me.
Yeah, of
that
course.
was it. That was the end. Not even a response, just an automatic block. And I thought, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well,
then I saw you a few days later comment that maybe all priests should just get off Twitter.
Yeah. Well, it's the sarcastic own. And like the sarcastic own from a lay Catholic, like I can forgive sarcastic owns from a lot of people.
Yeah.
The sarcastic own from an ordained minister of the church whose literal life is given to the service of God's people is one of the most infuriating things as a Catholic. It's one of the most infuriating things as a Catholic woman who works in media, because it's like, just turn the damn phone off. Like, don't you have more important things to do? I get that, like, you need to calm down or chill, but like on your day off, you're active, or like time off, you're actively choosing to just go like be a shitty excuse me, I probably shouldn't have said that. I apologize. To be a crappy priest on Twitter, when like you could just go be a crappy priest in real life. Like, you don't need to do it on your Twitter. But like, I got a little angry about that, because I was thinking of my own bad Twitter priest interaction where a priest of an order that I love and adore and like know some of his brothers and like texted a couple of them about all of this. He posted this really just stupid thread about how he would own charismatic Catholics and be like, none of the people I ever prayed over were slain in the spirit, and I wouldn't let them fall over. I would catch their shirts and prevent them from doing it, and like prove to them that I didn't believe any of this malarkey. And he was like, he's trying to be funny. He's not funny. He's trying to be clever. He's not clever. He's not a good storyteller. Because like he basically says, like at one point he literally says, I don't believe in clericalism, but sometimes you can have a little clericalism fun. And I'm like, do you realize what you're tweeting? Like this thing that the Pope has talked about ad nauseum about how clericalism is a poison in the church. You are advertising in a habit on your Twitter that you would do that for fun, just to own people who are maybe having like a legitimate moment with the Holy Spirit or are trying to. And then you're joking about it afterwards. So I called him on it. I said, hey, Father, maybe you shouldn't joke about this kind of thing on Twitter, and got the classic, oh, you just don't understand the joke. And I was like, no, I understand the joke. I'm telling you it's not funny. And I actually think like maybe you should delete it because I don't think this is helpful. And we went 10 rounds. By the end of it, I like had screenshotted it and texted it to a couple of friends. And I like made a joke about his name that I was pretty proud of. And I'm not going to say on your show because it had to lead me to confession later on. And it was just like a whole thing. And it has stewed in my mind for weeks. And then there was the priest with the meme about religious trauma. And like people just don't like being told that their sins are sins, and that's why they're avoiding confession, not because they have any sort of real religious trauma. And it's like, oh my gosh, who is teaching these guys how to use the internet? And why isn't it a layperson with any sort of PR, media, HR training? Or like, why isn't it just like a person who loves them that says, Father, you're accountable for every moment of your priesthood, public and private. And this is like a weirdly public way to be a bad priest.
Yeah.
If we can't have you as a good priest online, that raises about 10 red flags for me in person. If you can't handle yourself online in such a way that you give a good witness to Jesus Christ, turn off your phone, because that's harmful to the church and to the people of God. And I don't think that's too absurd of a standard to have. You literally have given your life in service to the church. And if you think, well, I'm allowed to turn that off when I'm online, then you should not have taken vows as an ordained minister of the church. Like you should not have said yes to what the bishop asked you, like full stop. And maybe that gets me in trouble, but I posted it on LaCroix International and they let me. So I'm fine with saying it on a podcast too. And got, I will say, some good feedback. Like got a couple of emails from priest friends who said it was a little harsh, but I took it to heart because like, you're not wrong. And I was like, I know I'm not wrong. That's why I said it. And I'll be arrogant about that. Like, I know I'm right in this take because I have to maintain the same standard in my own mind.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. I would never, if a non-Catholic, this is what this priest should have thought about. If a non-Catholic had walked up to him in a Catholic bookstore and seen a statue of the Pietà, the Mary holding the crucified Jesus, and said, what am I looking at here? And said it like sincerely and inquiringly, and like has found themselves in this Catholic bookstore, which is kind of sometimes what Catholic Twitter is. And you as a priest looked at him and said, you idiot. Like, do you not know? Like that, you would have had to answer to that on your deathbed. Like the Lord would have called you out for that. I have no doubt. So because you wouldn't say that to someone in person, you'll just fire it off on Twitter as a gotcha quote tweet because you think that's going to gain you followers, or it's going to make you cool to the trad bros, or it's going to like give you some sort of influence in this weird online parish of your own creation. I'm sorry. No, dude, you're not worthy of the collar if that's what you think is okay. And I say that as someone who has called priests out and has sometimes well and sometimes poorly. And I've been blocked by a handful of priests. Sometimes I block them first, like I don't need that in my life. I've got good priests that I can just call up and we can have good conversation in person. And it fires me up that we think that these phones and we think that this Twitter doesn't matter.
Yes.
Like you're a convert. You saw all that stuff. Yes. Like that could have driven you away from the path to Jesus Christ by way of the sacraments.
Yeah.
Do we believe that that's the truth? And if so, then live like it, even online.
Yeah. Oh, edit that out.
Sorry. And you okay?
And the other thing too, the number of, and you're so right with that, Katie. For me, definitely, I didn't know a single Catholic in person until I began RCIA. Honestly, then I met some marginally okay Catholics.
They were the gossipy Catholics,
right? Yeah. But the majority of Catholics that I knew were from social media, were from Facebook, were from Twitter. I thank God found a priest named Father Roderick from the Netherlands back when podcasting was in its infancy.
And
I used
he's
to download
the godfather of it. Yeah.
He is. I used to download a show on my iPod, plugged into my computer with a timer set to turn the computer on and download podcasts in a batch file. Like it was like old school podcasting. I found him early on, and he gave me such hope for priests because he was a great guy. He's kind, he's cordial, he's thoughtful, he's funny. He likes Star Trek and Star Wars and right. I met him early on, in the podcasting sense. Right. But I really didn't know that many Catholics in person until quite late in my journey. And so many people that I've talked to on this show, or emails that I've got of people that have been on this show telling their own journeys, are in a similar place where they don't actually know any Catholics in person. They've met so many through social media, through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or TikTok. And how detrimental is that if the priests that are out there, that are on there, are those priests with those hot takes saying those stupid things? Like you say, you would never say, hey, are you an idiot?
Right.
To this guy who's looking at this statue in person. You'd never say that, I hope.
Yeah.
But somehow on Twitter, that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Because, yeah.
I think what gets me, and J.D. Flynn from The Pillar, and a lovely Catholic guy on Catholic Twitter, said this a while back, that when we talked about the idea of the parish, that the parish, like that, a pastor is the pastor of everyone in their territorial parish, whether they're Catholic or not.
Right.
So like that informs my thinking. Imagine this guy with the question with the statue is a non-Catholic in your parish. You are as responsible for that guy's spiritual health and leading him towards Christ and the Catholic faith as a Catholic in the pew there. Yeah. So how are you driving a person like that away by those stupid comments like that?
Yeah.
That you're responsible. Like you're the shepherd of the sheep, that on the last day, like that is something that you have to be accountable for, whether that person's in your pew or not, right? I guess this, I don't know how in the scheme of things how virtual parishes work, right? How that'll be determined in the end of all things, the day of judgment. But if this is somebody that you are interacting with on Twitter, gosh, you have responsibility as a priest for that person's soul.
Yeah.
Like what the heck?
Well, I think too, like it's not to say that like every single thing you say has to be received like some things are taken out of context, right? Like, there've been a handful of things I've said on my radio show that one person gets mad at, and I'll get an email or like a tweet that
I love those.
Maybe it's not like a full blown further, like you could have gone a little further with the thought. This is like the blatant, obnoxious, facetious, just hateful things that a person thinks. Usually they assume they're being funny when they say it, and it's not funny. And is in fact quite offensive and can be very harmful. And I think we have to take to heart, like truly be quite considerate of the power of that for all of us, like lay Catholics. If I as a mom, if all I ever tweeted out was how much I hated parenting or how tired I was all the time, right? Like that gives a really shitty witness to parenting, right? It gives a really crummy witness to being a mom. So like there's a responsibility of a witness to the vocation that's realistic and honest, but also like a loving of other people. Father Mike Schmidt said I interviewed him back in January after his talk at the Sikh conference. This is not a name drop. Father Mike's a friend of mine, but we're doing this interview and we're like trying to be formal and we're just cutting up. And at one point I was like, Father, that was a great talk last night, but it was like not your normal talk. Like Father's always good for like a good family story. Talks about his dad a lot. He's got a great dad. His mom recently passed from cancer, and at the time she was fighting it. So like I was expecting a dad story, a mom story. Like I was expecting something incredibly personal, and it was a good talk, but like none of that was in there. So I asked him about it. It's like, how did you write this talk? And what he said in answer to the question, he said it like very seriously, and it was a bit jarring because nothing in our interview up to that point had been serious. And it's lived in my head rent free for months now. He said, if I don't love the audience that I am speaking to, the talk will be bad. And he just he sat down and he prayed and like asked the Lord to give him words to love the audience of 17,000 college students well. And out came the talk that he gave. And it was wonderful. And it was exactly what he felt they needed to hear. And it's like, yeah, if I don't love my audience, whether that audience is a podcast audience, whether it's a radio audience, or the people that have chosen to follow me on Twitter, or even like the people who will just see it, like they don't follow me, but they might see it. If I don't love them as God's own creation and in his image and likeness and treat them as such, then it will not be good what I share. It will not be received in a way that truth can perhaps be witnessed to. And I know that sounds heavy and that sounds like a huge responsibility, but it is. The Sisters of Life have a phrase on the back of their medal that they wear around their neck. And it's a line from a poem. And it's that nothing is whatever, or that nothing is, or like nothing will ever be. I forget exactly what it is, but that nothing will ever be casual or small. And that idea of so much of our life is lived casually and, this is just some small little thing. It's like, no, everything is weight. Every tweet fired off, every like, every retweet, every quote tweet, every own, every moment has significance in the grand scheme. And maybe even more so in like these public spaces where non-Catholics or curious people or, the person who's trying to revert or whatever sees it,
Yeah, that's excellent. I love that. That's very well said. I want to talk for a second about bad liturgy. I think ways to share the faith. I mean, this is maybe a big topic, but I can't think of the number of times that I've encountered, guests on the show talked about this, and I've encountered this in my own life and heard stories of this. There's this strange perception, and it's not just priests, it's from like liturgical committees at parishes that design things a certain way, directors of music who choose certain music. There's this strange notion that to share the faith, we got to change stuff or do it cooler or, reach the youth with songs from the 90s that I used to sing when I was like an evangelical, in high school, right? Like there's, it can. Oh, it's that's hitting home.
I had a t-shirt that said "Go Mad" as a child. I still have it. My kids, I use it as like a paint shirt for them.
That's amazing. It's a strange impulse though, right? That somehow we can share the faith by dumbing down the liturgy, making it more accessible, making the songs cooler or hipper. And time and again, I've never heard from a person on this show who's converted, never had an email from anyone and said like, you know what? Oh my gosh, that liturgy was so dumb. I loved it. It totally got it. Understood all of it. I'm Catholic now. That's never the thing, right? But time and again, we encounter bad liturgy. Yeah. That's bad because it intends to try and, share the faith with people. Why? I
think bad liturgy is selfish liturgy.
Yes.
It's an attempt to make ourselves the center, whether it's with the music, whether it's with the flourish upon the readings. Like, I've been to a perfectly reverent mass that just had a lector that took a few too many liberties with their tone. And I'm like, just read the reading. I don't need you to do voices. And that's not an exaggeration. She was a very dramatic woman who always read like the second reading on Good Friday. And she's sweet off the ambo, but man, don't give her a mic and expect like a boring passage. Anyway, it's bad liturgy is selfish liturgy. And that can happen. Yeah. That can happen in the super traddiest of parishes or like the craziest and liberalist of parishes, right? Like bad liturgy is liturgy that centers the individual and not the worship of God. And I think what happens is we just understand, like when we walk into a holy place where everything from our posture to our view to our voices is supposed to be lifted higher and focused forward. When we start to look down, when we start to look side to side and not vertically, it takes us out of that proper orientation that we're supposed to have. We made a switch. Like we changed parishes a few years ago for a couple of reasons. Our kids go to the Catholic school where we go to church now, so we wanted the tuition subsidy. But also because like the liturgy was getting to a point where my kids walked in and they were not drawn forward. And if they weren't drawn forward, but were instead drawn down or side to side, it was harder to get through because they didn't think it was any different than just like going to the pizza restaurant that we go to on Tuesday nights or like running around at the park. Like it didn't elevate them. And I think there's something that we're trying to communicate in the liturgy, which is this witness to something that is completely supernatural. We forget this mystical mysterious supernatural component of our faith, we try to make everything so ordered and naturalized. And like, no, I want the smells, bells, and weirdness of Catholicism. I want a thigh bone on the altar and a song in Latin and more smoke than I know what to do with, because I'm not going to get that at Target.
Yeah.
Like, I can go get the fun Lizzo song and like bubbles at Target. I want the smoke, the incense, the fire and brim homily, and Jesus in what looks like a host. That's what I want when I walk into church. It's like my traddiest take. Let's surprise everybody. I wear a veil, ladies and gentlemen. And you know why I wear a veil when I go to mass? I think this is actually the first time I've ever publicly said this in anywhere. So you're welcome for this like hot take of Katie McGrady. I wear a veil because I can't do that anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And like, but the one place where I get to be like weird Catholic is in church. The one place where like nothing makes sense and there's something that's attractive about that is when I walk into mass. And when we try to make it like every other part of our lives, we lose people. Or people think like, well, why am I coming here? The Protestant church is better music, better donuts, and better preaching, like quite frankly. But we have this thing and it's called the Eucharist. And like everything is oriented around us getting to go up there and receive that. And it's selfish of us to deny people that weird smells and bells experience of Catholicism that is otherworldly and supernatural and is a profound witness. I mean, how many people have converted because of balloons in church versus how many people have converted because of incense and Father like taking time to explain this is why we're doing this and this is what matters. And you know, the singing of the Anima Christi, I it'd be weird if I sang that to my kids in the kitchen, but I get to sing it to them at church, and that's really cool. Sorry, that was me on bad liturgy. Traddiest you're ever going to find me online.
This is great. This is an exclusive super trad.
Exclusive super trad. No, I'm sure like me being super trad. It's a Novus Order that we go to at a very reverent parish. Everything's in English. We sing the Anima Christi in English. Everything's, it's about as normal as you would get a good Catholic mass, as it should be, right?
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, there's so much in there that you're right about. I mean, and it is that selfish impulse. And again, it's not, again, just a bash on priests, because there's a lot of people that are involved in making the liturgy what it is, right? But I can think of a particular priest, but lots of priests too, I think, are in this camp, that every homily is just about them, their experiences, their mom, their dad, the thing that happened to them at the Walmart just now. Like it's right, not barely even touching on the readings for the mass for that week, right? And then the Eucharistic prayer, we're ad-libbing extra parts because why? Because no one needs to, and it actually takes you out of that prayer, because they stumble into and stumble out of their ad lib, because it's not natural. It's not, what's written on the page. It doesn't belong there. Right. I can think of these. I think I told the story once on the show that I witnessed a baptism in this parish, not in my hometown. So it was elsewhere, but I got an email from a friend who knew who I was talking about. And like, yep, I know exactly who you mean. I thought, maybe it was a little bit too on the nose. But literally in the baptism, like in the rite of baptism at the mass, the priest was dumbing it down. Yeah. And was going, I gotta say this now because this is what the church tells me to say. But you know what? Like this, what I really mean is this. Or like, now we'll pray this, but like we kind of have to, guys. But let's just, like, every element. And he was trying to make it more hip and accessible to the families that were bringing their kids forward for baptism. But dumbing it down, like taking away from that beautiful rite. And I thought, like, what is they're trying to accomplish here? What you're passing on is the beauty of the Catholic faith. Why do you have to make that seem less than it is? Like, what is what's happening?
I mean, bad formation, bad execution. Yeah. But like, also, I think there is I'm not going to forgive it quickly, but like, I think there's a fear that I'll go back to it's too weird, or it's too hard, or like, people won't appreciate it, or I think it's oftentimes a lack of faith that people will take the time to maybe go seek out answers for that which might seem confusing or that they don't understand. Yeah. And like, that is probably true about some people. But I think it's more true that if there's something happening inside a church building and that person happens to be in the church building in the first place, that perhaps we could like trust that individual to be elevated or to be curious enough to ask. There's this common thread, and I hear it a lot because we're doing a lot of conversation about this, of that Pew research that came out years ago that only like 30% of Catholics believe it's really Jesus. Everybody freaked out. Like, let's spend millions of dollars to fix that problem. Let's write a gazillion and one programs. Let's launch 1,000 ships to fix the problem. And all I kept thinking was, we're so focused on that 70% that don't believe that I'm not entirely sure we're concentrating on the 30% that do. And like, I wonder if maybe there'd be some value in asking the 30% that do believe why, and then just doing more of that. And like, there's a great podcast with Guy Raz, How I Built This. It's my favorite podcast that's ever been created because Guy is just an incredible interviewer. He's just got this great curiosity with his guests, and he interviewed the founders of Instagram. And Instagram in its earliest days was actually an app called Bourbon. And it was a check-in app, and it was failing. Like, it was tanking. It was a check-in app that had photos, and like nobody understood why you would check into a Starbucks and take a picture of your chai tea latte. And so every investor that they're meeting with, they're hitting a wall until one guy said, I want you to just go ask your users why they keep using it. Because once they had a user, the user would stay. They were just having a hard time acquiring users. And they discovered it was the photos. And so they were like, oh, like nobody really cares about the location or the rating of the chai tea latte. They just want to see the picture of it. And then if we give them ways to make the picture look better and like photography level, like with these filters, which everybody's already using on Adobe, but now we can just put it on this phone that's already in their pocket. And like Instagram has 2 billion active users with 90 million plus posts a day. So they just went and asked the people who were using it and did more of that. And I think in Catholicism, if you were to go ask the 30% who believe, the 30% who show up to Mass on Sunday, the 30% who love the smells, bells, and whistles and are getting their kids baptized and who are listening to Catholic podcasts and buying all those products and watching those programs, what they would tell you they want more of is the authenticity and the reality and like part. Everything in life is just so easy all the time. Not like the suffering of life, but like everything is made to be just easy and accessible.
Yeah.
I can, as we were sitting here, my husband texted me and said, don't forget to place the target order. As we were doing this interview, I tapped 2 buttons to place the target order that we needed to place for my daughter's school activity tomorrow. That's how easy life is, that I can simultaneously have a conversation with you about Catholicism and place a target order. I don't want easy church. That's not to say I don't want it to be like accessible. Don't take me out of context, folks. I want, it has to be different. And I think if you were to ask the 30% who stuck around and continue to go even post-COVID, that's what they would say. They want it to be everything that it could be in that elevated experience. And it's a dumb thing to not give it. You know, it's a bad way to share the faith to try to make it look like everything else in the world.
Yeah, that's a great take. That's a nice, matured, cold
There's
take.
nothing hot about that. There's nothing hot about it. I've listened to that podcast episode dozens of times to like really understand the secret sauce of that.
Thanks for multitasking also.
Yes.
I appreciate
She needed donuts for this like out of the tomb Easter activity that they're doing.
We briefly had Target in Canada. They came, they failed, and they left again.
And they left, man.
And it was
I'm
very
sorry.
disappointing. But
so
now
sorry.
we're at 5 minutes from Target across the border. So
Oh, good. Okay, yeah.
We're doing okay. We can't
Come to
order.
America.
They
Yeah.
won't bring us donuts. We have to go.
No. Yeah, you gotta
get
go.
them. Okay, one more thing, and I want to ask because this is today's hot take.
Yeah. Okay. My one.
Catholic merchandise, right?
Oh gosh.
This is the thing. Like, this is okay. So I wore a Jesus, I trust in you shirt to work today, right? Liturgically appropriate. For me, I don't know who's going to see that and care.
Yeah.
Nobody asks questions. No one seems to care. I don't know, but there could be somebody who saw that and
you never know.
I wonder about that, and I have more questions, right? They might see my, you rocking some cool Catholic socks, or something, right? Drinking your Catholic coffee. There's, as you know, this fine line between we're marketing the faith and we're sharing the faith. I'm a big proponent of supporting Catholic and Christian businesses in town because I know, or I hope that when I give them my money, they'll use that money prudently and wisely and reinvest in Catholic things and Christian things and the church and grow that. So that's one thing, but there is that weird thing of marketing, of buying, right? My family goes to an evangelical mega church that was very, very marketed. Yeah. And the pastor was arrested for abuse scandals, right? Now, we know a lot about that in the Catholic Church. That's not a surprise. I'm not saying that we're better than that kind of thing. Right. But there's a downside to the heavily marketed, marketing, selling Catholicism, selling the faith.
Yeah, the Catholic industrial complex. There's a productization, and I gave my hot take on this on Twitter because, and it all was triggered by two things. I got a DM on the Easter Vigil from a very well-known priest on Instagram asking me to market this product of his. Like, can I send you one to give away on Easter Vigil night at 6 p.m.? Like, dude, you're not getting ready for church? Like, that was like the first thought. It was like,
right.
Aren't you like, don't you guys have like a big fire to go set up in a few minutes? Like that was, and I, as somebody who's gone to the vigil for years, is my favorite liturgy of the year and haven't been since having kids because it's just not feasible. Yes. It made me viscerally angry.
Yeah.
And then he sent me the product anyway. So he, already had my address apparently. And it's like nothing special. Okay, cool. Like it's a rosary. Great. So it's just like, it irked me that, do your job, man. Like, don't sell rosaries. Go like get ready for church. So that was like the first thing that kind of like triggered this thought of, what are we doing? Like merchandising everything, productizing everything, selling everything. It's not to say that Catholic products are bad. You can see my office. I'm surrounded. I'm surrounded by Catholic things, of both subscription boxes and things that people have sent me and stuff that I've purchased. It's when we tell people this product is the thing that you need, that you must have,
right.
that will make you this type of Catholic, that has this aesthetic, that has this vibe, that like seeks out the love of Jesus. And it triggered this morning, the day that we're recording this, somebody had posted this big long thing about an apron that has flowers on it. It's like $50.
No.
And like cook with the saints. And my apron is a $7 Target apron that I bought in the Hearth and Hand clearance rack 2 summers ago that's covered in grease stains. And it's like, I'm not less Catholic because I cook with the old apron. But somebody's going to see that. Some vulnerable individual who maybe feels alone, who longs to be married, who maybe is like, just their family didn't come over for Easter, whatever it is, like that, I feel like it's predatory in some ways in an attempt to sell a product. Now, I this is not me trying to read the hearts of people who make Catholic products. And like, I host a couple podcasts that sell ads. So like, and I like get paid by an archdiocese to talk on the radio for 2 hours every day. Like, this is not me saying Catholics can't get paid. This is not me saying that everything in Catholicism needs to be free. It's more just like, I feel like this thing is happening where we believe that the best way to be Catholic has to look this way with these things, having followed these steps. And like how similar all the sinners and how diverse the saints. I just keep going back to that line where if we convince everybody to buy the same stuff, like eventually we're all just going to look like little Catholic automatons. Like if everybody's just like wearing the same t-shirts and hanging the same things in their homes and like doing the same activities with their kids for liturgical living, like at what point does that all just kind of break apart? And we like wake up and realize, oh my gosh, like I'm just allowing people to give me things that express my faith or look like my faith, but I'm not living my faith. Or like, I feel like I'm punching the card because this box of activities has come to my house, but then like, I don't do them with my kids because they're too difficult to do, but I bought the box. So that was like half the battle. And I'm ragging on things that I purchase and buy and use and have promoted. So like, I realize how much of a hypocrite I am by saying this, but it's just been kind of eating away at me since Easter Vigil night when I was asked to promote this product. And then this morning with that darn apron. So it's like, absolutely not. Nobody needs to spend $50 on an apron. The purpose of them is to get dirty. They need to be cheap and easy to clean. And this is like hand embroidered, like washed by hand in a sink. Like, I'm not like that. Nor does it make me more Catholic to buy it. Okay, that's my rage moment. That was my hot take. Of course, some people took it out of context, and a lot of people agreed. I need everyone to agree with me. I'm quite confident in the opinion. It's more just like, this is something I've been grappling with. And at the end of the day, I think that's a really cool way to share the faith. Hey, this is something I'm practicing. This is something I'm struggling with. This is something I'm trying to understand. Let's talk about it. And let's talk about it kindly. And let's talk about it not like we're clashing cymbals, but like try to treat one another with dignity and love. Somebody that disagreed with me, who I know in real life, shot me a text message. He's like, I want to understand. Because like, you get paid to speak. Is it not wrong for you to go get paid to speak? And I was like, you're right. That is a valid criticism. And it's why I called myself a hypocrite. in criticizing the merchandising of things when like I allow people to pay me money to come give them a talk. What's the difference between intellectual property and like a real life product? But this is something I'm trying to understand more deeply. And like, I think we can have a good conversation about it and maybe give a good witness to the faith in the process, you know? That's my rant. Sorry.
That's very well said. And you brought it right back around like to how to do that properly. I love that. You know, I thought about having a conversation at the end of this about how to share the faith well, but every time you kind of turn it around and go, let's try this.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Yeah. Very well. Very well done. And I think you're right in that like, regardless of whether or not where we fall on the idea of Catholic products, that conversation being held like that, cordially, and wrestling with that is like, you know, a good kind of way to share the faith. That's a good witness. Here's somebody struggling with this question, talking about it. Like, that's good.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a good thing.
And like nobody, I will say, I think I've done this a lot in my radio show where we do this thing on the Katie McGrady show called Low Stakes Controversy, where I announce to my audience, here's a conversation I'd like to have, but I would like to have it without anybody yelling at the other caller. I'd like to have it with like, you get to express your opinion. I'm going to give you space to express that opinion. I might ask you more questions about it. I might tell you what my opinion is. And I think I've trained my listeners well. Like they know I'll hit the dump button if they don't follow the rules, but also like, let's learn actually how to have these conversations. And it's a dying art in families. It's a dying art among friends. We've taken things to text. And so you lose a little bit of nuance. And maybe that's part of why Twitter is sometimes so difficult because you can't hear the tone. But I think it's worth trying, you know, and I think we'll have to answer for it if we don't, you know?
Yeah. And you're right on the product thing too. I can remember when and you were among this crowd, I'm sure, Katie, influencers were getting the first copy of the Word on Fire Bible. Everyone's posting their pictures. And I waited and I waited and I waited and I got a copy. Okay. I got a copy eventually. They were sending me a copy. But there was that weird kind of like, what emotion am I feeling here? That I'm feeling like I'm being left out because I haven't got this new edition of a Bible. Yeah, like, that was a really weird, and it's a great Bible. I love it. Okay, I do love it. It's wonderful. But there was that weird space where like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
like
we try to manufacture it. Yeah, we manufacture hype. Yeah. Yeah, it's the Fire Festival, right? Like everybody posted the orange. Now, full disclosure, I'm writing one of the intros for the next volume of the Word on Fire Bible. So I'm a big fan of it, like enough so that I immediately said yes to that invitation. Yeah. But yeah, it's what happened with the Fire Festival. Everybody posts an orange block to like spark conversation. What's coming? And then it all blew up in everybody's face. We do that, I think, because we know that at the end of the day, what we're sharing is truth, or we're trying to. Yeah. And so if I can spark conversation, even if it seems a bit inorganic, but everybody can see right through that, right? This is why I wonder sometimes, again, like when my kids find my Instagram, this keeps me up at night sometimes. Like when my kids find my Instagram, when they find my Twitter, when they go look at my Facebook, when I'm dead and gone, if, you know, we're not all on Mars at that point, are they going to see the same mom online that they saw in their house? Whether that's in the replies to a DM or the quote tweets or the retweets or the saying yes or the saying no to promoting something. And I say no a lot more than I say yes. And I think that question of integrity is something that we all have to very much grapple with, especially when it comes to the way we talk about and share Catholicism and what we did or didn't get to do in certain circles or in certain things that we did or didn't get to have. You know, like I remember when they contacted me to ask if I wanted a pre-release copy, and I selfishly said yes, because I just wanted to see what it looked like. You know, you're charging this much for it. I want to see what it looks like. And my sister wanted to see it. My sister, you know, is a big fan of it. She thinks it's expensive. You know, pretty things are expensive sometimes. And then it was that we need this many posts or we need this many things about it or, you know, all that different stuff. And I felt dirty. Like I felt kind of skeeved, like, oh no, like, and I said, can I just do one? Like, can I just like, because I think my followers would see right through that, because I've never done more than one for something. And I'm kind of pulling back the veil here. I don't think they would be a lot of people shared, you know, like their valid criticisms of it and how it did or didn't need to be improved. But yeah, that was a weird couple of weeks. And I felt, I'll tell you, if you felt weird not getting it, I felt weird getting it. I felt really weird getting it. And I mean, it's sitting behind me on my office shelf. I use it all the time. Again, I'm writing one of the intros for the next volume on 1 Samuel. So I clearly like it, but that was a weird week of like, oh my gosh, did I sell out? You know?
Yeah. But it was a weird week for me because I thought, well, first of all, I had my own internal complex. Like, I'm not influenced enough to get a copy, and I was, Katie. In the end, I was influenced. So my ego, you came to the fire festival. My ego was satisfied. But in that interim, you're thinking, am I less Catholic without this thing? Like, am I incomplete? And you're seeing pictures of this thing, and at some point, after I got it, and I'd looked through it and I'd read it and stuff. At some point, I can't remember what happened, but somebody needed a Bible. And my wife said, "Oh, you just give him that." And I went, "No!" Like my reaction was like
also, it's not
visceral.
It's not the whole Bible.
Yeah, it wasn't. My reaction was this visceral, like, no one can have that. That's mine. Mm-hmm. But like you step back and go, with all these Catholic products and stuff, right? Like, are we less Catholic without these different things we have? This latest rosary, this latest version of the Bible, this latest different thing. Are we more Catholic with this? And then, what's the purpose of this thing that I have? If I'm not willing to part with this, if I can't hold my Bible lightly enough to let it go, what am I doing as a Catholic?
It's the silver bullet. If I just had this thing, I'd be more prayerful. If I just had that piece of technology, I'd be more organized. I'm guilty of this. Like, I think we do it. It's just, it feels dirtier when it's the faith.
Yeah.
Because like, it doesn't cost to go to mass. Yeah. Like I can walk into the adoration chapel and he has freely allowed himself to be that tiny, that small, that approachable. And then we put a cost of entry. And again, this is not to say like not charging for conferences or like Patreons that. Don't misunderstand me. It's not me saying that those things are bad. It's just me saying that when we sell it as it is the essential. No, the essential is Jesus in the Eucharist. And when we commercialize that, it gets skeevy. And did Jesus, my daughter frequently reminds me, because this is like a core memory in her little brain, that in Holy Week begins with an entrance into Jerusalem on a donkey. Next thing Jesus does is flip tables. Yes. And like she deeply took that to heart this year in Holy Week. And like, why did Jesus flip tables? What was he angry about? Oh, there was money. I put $1 in the basket every mass. Yeah, but it's not the same thing. Mama, you get paid to go speak about Jesus. Oh, crap. Like now my child's calling me out. Like, is Jesus flipping tables in my house kind of thing? But like deeply, and I maybe that's part of why it's in my head. The Easter Vigil thing, the darn apron. And here's the other thing. Like, I like the apron. I like the apron. It's pretty. I think it would be a lovely thing to give to someone. It's the most impractical thing you could possibly use in your kitchen. But like, I like it. Maybe there's like a jealousy in my head of like, it's really, really pretty. I'm not worthy of such a pretty apron, but it's also like this. I know the Catholic women out there who see products or courses or books or whatever and think that's the thing that's going to make me the right Catholic woman, or like men who are like, oh, if I just drink this Catholic beer, like I'll have good Catholic male friends. And it's like, no, what you need, the only thing is Jesus in the Eucharist, freely given and available to you in any tabernacle that you can find, and there can't be if you find somebody that's putting a price tag on that, run the opposite direction,
And the apron.
Maybe mail me one. Maybe I should just reach out to her and see if she wants to give me a free one and I can promote it and
go ahead and
have like an affiliate link and make some cash. No, I would never. Yeah.
Mail you an apron.
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy it and do the next podcast with the apron on.
With the apron on, I'll send you.
You feel jealous.
I'll send you. It's a beautiful. I've bought stuff from this woman's shop. I love her stuff.
I have an apron.
It was just for whatever reason dirty. The apron this morning. I was like, no, come on, don't go the apron route. Like, come on. Albert, or K Albert. I'm not exactly sure what you go by. K Albert. K Albert Little. This has been fun. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, this is it.
But my children,
you got to go,
are waiting for mommy's kisses goodnight.
I was going to say goodbye.
Yeah. Okay.
And leave.
I love this. This was great. Thanks for saying. I volunteered to come on, and I'm happy I did.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll put links to all your awesome things in the show notes. There's lots of places that can find you.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I appreciate you cussing and all on the show this week. So thank you. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.